Far beneath the quiet stars, beyond the edge of mortal sight, there lies a realm not of fear, but of stillness. A world where every wandering soul finds its way home. Tonight, we journey there into the hidden calm of the underworld, where Hades, the silent guardian, tends to the balance of life and rest. Welcome, dear friend, to Sleeping Therapy by Emma. I'm Emma, your storyteller and guide, here to weave you into a tale designed to soothe your heart and carry your mind into dreams. If you enjoy these calming mythic journeys, remember to subscribe so each night you can return to these soft stories waiting just for you. Now, close your eyes, let the world outside grow quiet, and together we will follow the gentle footsteps of Hades, guardian of the unseen realms. Chapter 1 is the silent gates far beneath the twilight sky, in a place where even the stars seem reluctant to wander, rested a realm most mortals dared not dream of. The underworld, veiled in shadow, stretched endlessly, yet tonight its story was not told in whispers of dread, but in the hush of timeless stillness. At its quiet heart lived the guardian few truly understood Hades. Mortals often imagined him as a tyrant cloaked in fire, but those who drifted close in dreams discovered something else. Hades was not thunder like Zeus, nor the crash of waves like Poseidon. He was the gentle hush between heartbeats, the still pause between day and night. Where his brothers thundered in force, he endured in constancy. He was the grounding soil. He was inevitable. He was resting. So as you settle yourself now, nestled beneath the blankets or resting your head upon the pillow, listening as the world grows dim, let me take your hand in story, as if we were walking on soft earthen paths. Our feet tread lightly, for we are approaching gates older than the oceans, older than Olympus itself, gates of iron that gleam faintly with starlight. They are immense and etched with ancient sigils, yet they do not threaten. They hum with a resonance so deep it is felt rather than heard, a lull of music resting beneath sound. Two figures wait at the gates. One is a hound, Cerberus, the guardian, who tonight does not look monstrous but calm, like an oversized watchful dog. Midnight fur shimmers faintly, and all three heads rest gently on massive paws, each pair of eyes gleaming with quiet patience. The other is Hades himself, cloaked in robes darker than night, yet woven with tiny specks of hidden crystal, as though carrying fragments of stars stitched upon him. His presence is steady, his eyes aglow with embers resting in ash, neither condemning nor harsh, only the infinite patience of one who has watched countless ages pass and yet never hurries. He notices you. In this dreamlike story, he does not turn you away. With a single lift of his hand, the gates swing open softly, as though pleased to welcome you. Together you step forward into a realm beyond mortal knowing, where shadows and silence weave themselves into something strangely comforting. The path winds downward, sloping step by step into the earth. Yet the descent does not burden you. It is steady, as though the world is exhaling slowly, surrendering to rest. Around you, the sound of unseen rivers hums faintly, a melody beneath the ground. You walk quietly, for here silence has meaning. Hades walks beside you, silent, allowing the realm itself to tell its story. The dark stone walls whisper of heroes who once dared to enter, of poets who carried these shadows into their verses, of lovers who searched for hope even in stillness. Their echoes cling like fog, and beneath every echo hums the certainty of what lies here, rest. At last you reach an archway carved with frozen vines. Though they're stone, torchlight paints them to life leaves, curled intricately, tendrils twisting as if they might sway if the wind dared to reach this far. Hades raises one hand, and the archway brightens faintly, its lines glowing with hidden patterns. His voice comes at last, quiet and resonant. This is the first threshold. Here begins the realm of balance, not punishment, not glory, balance. The archway opens, and you step beyond. The air is cool and light, filled with silence that settles gently on your shoulders like a cloak. Ahead stretches an immeasurable plain, wide and shimmering. A velvet sky arches overhead, scattered not with burning suns, but with countless soft lights, silver flecks that move faintly, like drifting sparks of dream dust. This is the plain of whispering souls. Across the plain float gentle forms. They are the departed souls, but not suffering, not rejoicing either. They move slowly, as if caught in a dance of stillness. When their feet touch the ground, faint trails of silver grass appear briefly, glowing before melting back into the earth. There is no pain on them, no longing or terror. They are finally traveling with no weight upon their shoulders. They wander, they pause, and in their quiet wandering, there is peace. Cerberus pads across the plain, 3 heads moving as naturally as any dog at play. One head yawns, shaking gently before lowering again. Another twitches its ears as though listening to invisible sounds. The third watches the drifting figures, subdued and calm. Beside him, Hades turns to you. Do you see? This is not a place of terror. It is completion. Mortals waste their lives fearing me, when what they meet here is simply rest. His words nest into you, slow and deep. Completion, rest. The words slip into your chest like warm embers, glowing softly with meaning. Further along, the plain leads to a riverbank. The air grows cooler, scented faintly of rain. Ahead flows the Acheron, the river of sorrow. And yet you see at once there is nothing violent in its flow. The waters move quietly, gleaming with dim silver. At the edge, souls gather as though at a shoreline, waiting not anxiously but with patience. A boat rests on the water, a single ferryman standing steady with a lantern in hand. His hood hides his face, but the glow of his small flame paints a steady golden circle on the water. One by one, the souls step aboard. They do not look back. The ferryman tilts his lantern toward the water, and the boat glides forward without a ripple, leaving behind a trail that lingers like golden reflection. The souls drift out of view, fading into softening mist. Mortals see sorrow as terrible. Hades says, standing silently beside you, watching the boat depart. But sorrow is no more than a final offering. It is the body's way of loosening its hold. It carries weight across water and leaves that burden on the far side. Nothing is taken but weariness. As those words fold over you, your own body reacts instinctively. You breathe deeper, slower. The thought of sorrow as release, not punishment, moves through your chest. Inhale calm, exhale burden. The rhythm matches perfectly with the quiet lap of water against shores. The ferryman's lantern vanishes into fog, leaving behind pure stillness. Hades turns his eyes toward you. They glow like embered coal, steady and soft. For all their years, mortals think of me with dread. But truly, what I grant is sleep. When the waking day has carried too long, I give ease. I do not extinguish what lives. I shelter it, guard it, keep it safe. His words settle into the fabric of the realm itself, heavy yet comforting. A faint expression softens at the edge of his mouth, perhaps the shadow of a smile hidden in the dusk. The path continues gently, winding away from the river into a grove of trees. Their trunks rise silver as starlight, their leaves shaped like crescent moons, rustling with silken sound. Passing among them, you feel the world quiet further. No footsteps echo. The air balances around you, a rhythm of perfect stillness. Above, the sky bends into new constellations, unfamiliar yet soothing. Curved shapes resemble birds folding their wings in rest, cradles rocking gently, sleeping infants held in the cosmos. It feels as though the stars seek not to shine, but to sing in silence. Cerberus trots ahead, his tail swishing, occasionally glancing back at you with 3 sets of watchful eyes. You realize, with a touch of surprise, that his presence is reassuring. He does not guard against you, he walks to guard with you. His steady gait settles every step more deeply into calm. Together you climb a low rise of stone. From here the entire plain rolls out in every direction. The groves, the river's surface, the shifting constellations, souls wandering untired, all of it spreads like a tapestry. From here the underworld is not frightening. It is vast, still, immune to chaos. Hades raises one hand, palm extended, as though presenting the view. Here, he speaks, the world finds balance, not night, not day. Not joy, not grief, only stillness. The words sink into you like the long sigh of a body at ease. Stillness, the sound of a final exhale after a long, weary day. Stillness not as loss, but as rest. And there the first step of this journey pauses. Hades has shown you his realm, not through thunder or fury, but by guiding you quietly along paths built from peace. You have walked beneath constellations that soothe, passed by souls unburdened, breathed in stillness carried by rivers. The story continues deeper still through more rivers, through stone halls gleaming with unseen light, through mysteries awaiting their unveiling. But for now, here, under the silver poplars and silent stars, it is enough. The air itself folds around you like a lullaby. And in this great hush, Hades keeps watch, guardian not of darkness, but of eternal patient peace. As the grove of silver trees rustled its quiet song, you followed Hades further along the rise until the earth before you began to change. The soft soil gave way to stone, polished not by chisel but by eternity itself. The deeper you traveled, the more you sensed an ancient rhythm underfoot, as if the stones themselves remembered every soul that had ever passed across them. They carried not only the mark of time, but also a patience that could only be found in places untouched by light. The path was no longer random, but slowly winding, guiding you where it knew you needed to go. Ahead through the thinning mist, the outline of a great hall began to form. Towers of stone that appeared half-carved and half-found from the bones of the earth stretched upward, their surfaces glowing faintly with minerals hidden deep within. No mortal hands had built this palace. It seemed summoned from the core of the world itself, a place sculpted by inevitability rather than ambition. You paused instinctively, for the palace did not simply stand before you. It revealed itself slowly, as though asking permission to be seen. Hades stopped at your side, folds of his cloak brushing the ground like midnight flowing across the rocks. "My home," he murmured, voice resonant but low, carrying not pride but recognition, as though he were introducing you not to a possession but to a living companion. The gates of the palace rose tall and silent, their width carved with interlocking shape spirals that wound inward and outward endlessly, a reflection of the eternal cycle. Cerberus padded forward with a soft huff, and the gates stirred as though recognizing him, swinging open without sound. Beyond them, a corridor stretched wide, lined with torches whose flames did not flicker or sway. They burned with steady blue light that gave no smoke, as if the air here itself had learned calm. You stepped inward, following Hades into his hall. Each breath you took felt different here, not heavier, not lighter, simply slower. The air carried faint notes of ash and stone, but beneath that trace lingered something unexpected, the distant sweetness of pomegranate, faint and elusive, drifting through chambers you had yet to see. The floor was smooth and dark, polished by countless years. On its surface, faint constellations were etched carefully, lines connecting stars into patterns unfamiliar, yet deeply comforting, like lullabies pressed into stone. As you walked, your steps seemed to trace the figures, completing their designs. Each constellation underfoot told a quiet story, though you could not name the Thales. A sleeping deer beneath willow branches, a cluster of waves folding into the shape of a cradle, silent symbols woven into the foundation of the palace itself, so that even in its quiet, the hall sang softly to all who entered. The corridor widened until it became a cavernous chamber, vaulted ceilings seemingly formed from the earth's heart. Gemstones, not gaudy but subtle, grew naturally within the stone, glowing faint hues of amethyst, sapphire, and onyx. Their shimmering light scattered gently across the walls, soft as falling starlight. It was not a hall of vanity, but of balance, its beauty restrained, shaped not to impress, but to exist in harmony with the silence surrounding it. At the far end, a throne rose upon a dais of polished obsidian. Yet it was not the throne one might expect of a king. There was no glittering spectacle, no towering crown above it. Instead, the throne carried a still dignity, blending into the chamber's design as though it belonged, not ruling over the room, but existing within it. On its arms rested carvings of spreading roots, descending into the stone, reminding all who looked upon it that power here did not come from conquest, but from endurance. Hades moved toward it with unhurried pace, his robes trailing across the smooth stone and soundless waves. He placed one palm upon the throne's armrest before sitting. When he settled, it was not as a monarch demanding tribute, but as a steward, calm and rooted. Watching him there, you realized the truth. He was no tyrant. He was a keeper of equilibrium, a guardian of the border no one else had the patience to tend. He raised his gaze to you once more, ember glow flickering quietly. "They fear thrones," he said softly, "because they see them as symbols of dominion. But here, the seat is not of power. It is a reminder. The roots beneath this throne intertwine with every stone of the underworld. To sit here is to remember the threads that join all things, above and below." A silence followed his words, but it was a comfortable silence, like the pause between verses of a song when the listener already hums the melody in their heart. You found your attention drifting to the chamber's torches again. Their flames held steady, unwavering, like stars that never faltered. Less like fire, you realized, and more like echoes of captured souls burning brightly, not in torment, but in eternal vigil. They illuminated nothing but calm. The flickerless flame did not remind you of death. It reminded you of peace that could not be undone. As you lingered in this chamber, you began to hear faint sounds layered beneath the stillness. Gentle vibrations pulsed as though the very palace hummed a note of its own, deep and low, like the earth murmuring a lullaby to herself. Each tone resonated in your chest until you found your breathing matching its rhythm. Inhale, exhale, in perfect synchrony with this subterranean song. Hades rested both hands upon the throne's arms and watched you closely, though never with judgment. "Do you feel it?" His voice was softer than before, nearly blending into the resonance itself. "This is why I remain." Mortals imagine the underworld as absence, yet what it holds is continuity. The stillness is not hollow, it is steady, constant. It is what cradles existence, so that the rest may spill above without tearing apart. And as he spoke, you understood. The throne did not rule, the palace did not imprison, the flame did not destroy. They each existed only to balance the shifting currents of a world that would otherwise unravel. At that moment, you noticed the sweetness of pomegranate again, stronger this time. It drifted through an archway leading further into the hall. Hades followed your gaze, but did not move to explain. Instead, his faint smile appeared for the briefest breath, and his eyes lowered as if he remembered a story older than the stone walls themselves. Though he said nothing, you knew whose presence lingered in the scent. Persephone, his companion, his balance, whose time divided between earth and underworld, brought the seasons to mortals, yet also bound warmth into this most hidden realm. Her absence was felt not as emptiness, but as memory folded carefully into every part of the palace, like the sweetness of fruit still lingering on the air long after harvest. The fragrance carried with it the image of gardens hidden within shadows, blossoms opening faintly beneath stone ceilings where perseverance gave way to beauty. Somewhere beyond this hall such a garden surely grew, tended by hands that brightened even this hushed domain. You could almost hear their whispers through the air, petals brushing against the silence. Hades shifted slightly in his throne, and you felt the moment draw to a pause. It was not an ending, but the drawing of breath before the next phrase of his story unfolded. The torches continued burning, the gemstones continued glowing. Cerberus curled himself at the dais like a resting sentinel, as though the underworld itself had folded into slumber for a time. Hades spoke once more, the tones of his voice sinking deep into the walls. Here begins the palace. Within these stones lie halls of endless memory, chambers of silence, rivers that run not with water but with remembrance. Tonight, I open them to you. But first, you must rest. There is no journey forward without slowing to listen. To truly hear this world, you must breathe as it breathes. At his words, the hum of the palace deepened, and you instinctively let your inhale match its lull, your exhale dissolve into its calm. With each breath, the great hall of onyx light softened, steady and endless, and the throne ceased to appear as a seat and more as a heart. A heart not of man, not of God, but of the earth itself, yielding no sound but peace. And thus you lingered in Hades' palace, on the edge of discovering its secrets, yet already wrapped in the embrace of stillness it offered. Here the first chapter's journey reached its pause, soothing the mind until it, too, heard the hum of balance echoing through everything. And like the souls resting beyond the river, you too were kept in the watch of the silent guardian who promised no tumult, no storm, only endless calm beyond fear. Chapter 2 is the rivers of memory and the garden of renewal, beyond the throne room where silence shimmered like stone itself. Another path awaited, stretching from a high archway at the far side of the palace. Hades rose from his seat, his steps still unhurried, steady as the slow rhythm of the realm itself. With a single gesture of his hand, torches descended from the wall, floating softly into the air to guide the way. Their blue flames did not waver or hiss. They glowed with the calm certainty of stars. The glow pulled faintly across the polished stone floor, illuminating patterns that seemed to move the deeper you looked, branches curling into blossoms, streams spilling into oceans only to flow back into circles again. The entire floor was a hymn to cycles unbroken. As you stepped into the archway, the sweet trace of pomegranate rose once again, tender and elusive, as if woven into the breath of the palace itself. You could almost hear the murmur of gardens waiting. Cerberus trotted quietly behind, his paws barely sounding upon the floor. All three heads stayed alert, not in menace but in harmony, watching the chamber ahead open into new wonder. The corridor deepened into a cavern, though not of darkness. It was immense, as though hollowed by time's own hand, and at its center ran a river unlike any you had passed so far. This was the Lithe. It did not surge or roar, but drifted slowly, an endless ribbon of pale silver water gliding past in utter silence. Unlike the calm sorrow that tinted the Acheron, the Lethe carried something else entirely. Its surface gleamed faintly with forgotten light, brighter where shadow touched it least. Hades paused at its bank. The torchlight dimmed here, for the river itself glowed faintly from within, reflecting a calm none could disturb. Souls appeared from the cavern edges, walking toward it with the dreamlike pace of those who traveled without fear. They dipped their hands into the water as naturally as brushing wind. And when they drank, you saw the shift in their forms, their shoulders sagging with release, their steps growing lighter as though weight long carried had melted deep into the current. Their faces, pale and indistinct as shadows before, softened as memory dissolved from them. They no longer remembered pain, nor worry, nor names once carried. They became still. You turned to Hades. His gaze was locked on the current deep embers glowing with constancy. His voice carried low, blending with the soft hush of the flowing stream. Mortals fear forgetting because they believe they are only what they recall. But memory is a burden as much as a comfort. To forget is not to lose, but to return. In forgetting, the soul remembers the first truth, that it is free. The words entered you slowly, sinking like the river into stone. You could feel them resting in your chest, simple yet immense. The souls who released their memories here were not left hollow. They were restored to something pure, something that drifted beyond identity and burden alike. Their stillness was not emptiness, but fullness beyond distinction. A ripple moved across the water, slow and mesmerizing. The liquid seemed to glow more brightly for a heartbeat, and the ceiling of the cavern shimmered with reflection. Hades lifted his gaze upward. The roof itself was studded with crystals, each polishing the glow until it resembled daylight trapped beneath the earth. But this was not the harsh daylight of the mortal sun. This was gentler, softened by centuries. As you looked upon it, your own thoughts slowed as though joining the current of the Lethe. Troubles sank low, worries uncoiled one by one, dissolving quietly into the black waters of silence around you. Cerberus stepped close to the bank, lowering one head to sniff at the surface. For one quiet instant, his reflection shimmered faintly across 3 ripples, each head gazing back calmly. He did not drink, nor would he, for he carried his charge without need of forgetting. Yet even in his stillness you sensed reverence, as if he understood this place not with thought but instinct. Hades turned from the river, motioning you again to follow. His voice carried like the rumble of distant earth, steady. The rivers here are each a mirror. Sorrow, forgetfulness, memory, fire, tears. Mortals name them as torment. But truly, they are streams of release, each dissolving one more layer of the burdens carried in life. To pass them is not to suffer, but to lay a weight down. Only in placing that weight aside can one reach balance eternal. You walked again upon the stone, climbing steps that led from the cavern to a higher passage. The torches floated ahead once more, but farther up, you did not need them. A faint golden glow spilled from above, unlike the blue fires of the palace halls. The narrow corridor widened into another vast chamber, but this one breathed with life unimaginable. Before you spread a garden, bathed in golden twilight, though no sun burned overhead. Its light radiated from walls and air itself, warm and steady. Pomegranate trees grew in quiet arcs, their branches curling like decorative carvings, their fruits glowing a muted red that carried fragrance into every corner. Vines cascaded down columns made not by builders but by the earth's own will. Flowers bloomed in colors not seen in the mortal world petals of glossy silver. Blossoms burning faint hues of lavender flame, each drooping toward the soil as though whispering into it. The air itself was alive with perfume. You paused, astonished, as the scent of pomegranate returned fully sweet, rich, steady. Hades stood motionless for a long while, ash-amber eyes drinking in the sight as though it too refreshed him. His tone, when it came, was quieter than before. This place is hers. At once you understood. Persephone's presence was evident in every blossom. Though she lived half her time beneath the rolling fields of earth above, she brought its bloom into the underworld, weaving sunlight into shadow, season into stillness. Where Hades was constancy, Persephone was renewal. Her hands had coaxed from the silent stone this perpetual twilight garden, a gift for the realm that mortals thought lifeless. You passed along its walks slowly, your feet sinking into soil that felt warmer than stone. The pathways wove in rhythmic spirals, leading to pools filled with crystal water, where golden carp darted lazily. The air sang not with music, but with the subtle harmony of rustling branches, trickling streams, and the occasional ripple of leaves falling like feathered sighs into the paths. Each sound blended into something dreamlike, like the earth itself humming a soft bedtime song. Hades walked lightly here, though his presence still seemed eternal. His face softened in subtle ways, and the trace of sadness passed his brow for the briefest instant. He placed a steady hand on the bark of a pomegranate tree, fingers curling gently against it, as though remembering another's hand entwined with his. And though Persephone was not here, her presence felt in every breath. You realized the truth then. The underworld thrived not alone in stillness, but in harmony with renewal, the whisper of spring hidden even beneath shadow. The longer you stood in the twilight garden, the more your heart slowed, your body yielding into comfort. The air itself seemed to cradle you, heavy not with weariness, but with warm quiet. The petals of unseen blossoms floated down slowly, catching in your hair, glimmering before fading like fragrant mirage. Hades finally spoke once more, breaking the silence, not with demand, but with steady assurance. Even in endings, life plants itself again. Her hands made certain, this realm was once only shadow, now it remembers change. Not to disturb stillness, but to teach that even silence can bloom. The words echoed not only in your ears, but in your bones. Silence can bloom. As the golden garden stretched endlessly around you, time ceased again as though it had never existed. The chamber seemed to breathe like the chest of some great living creature, inhaling eternity, exhaling calm. Hades' robe shifted against the glow of blossoms. Cerberus curled at the edge of the path with quiet contentment, and your own breath steadied into the rhythm of this hidden twilight. The underworld was not a place of dread. It was a place of mysteries that sheltered both stillness and secret gardens, where shadow and blossom walked hand in hand. And here, in Persephone's garden, that truth unfolded gently. The story continued, carrying you deeper into these hidden realms, but for now the garden itself became enough. You inhaled its perfume, let your lids fall heavy with its glow, and heard the quiet hum of eternity resting calmly in your chest. Every sound, every touch of fragrance, folded itself around you like the embrace of the earth itself, reminding you not of endings but of transformations, the silent kind that sets the soul at peace. Leaving Persephone's twilight garden was like stepping from the heart of warmth into the echoes of deep stillness, yet the comfort did not vanish. It lingered against the skin, as if the garden's glow followed you invisibly onward. The petals had left their fragrance upon your breath, and the sound of leaves whispering into soil lived faintly in your ears. You understood now that the underworld was not simply a shadowed resting place. It was layered, woven from streams and gardens, memories and releases. Hades walked beside you once more, guiding you through another arch of stone. The air cooled gradually as the path descended, deeper than before. Cerberus padded along at a measured pace, one head glancing behind as though reassuring you, one fixated on the path ahead, and the third pausing often to sniff what could not be seen. The hound seemed as much a companion on this journey as his master, steadfast, protective, ever patient. The tunnel broadened into another cavern, taller still, where the sounds of trickling fell into a chorus. A trembling radiance pulsed faintly on the walls, shimmering like moonlight meeting dew. Here flowed a river unlike the Lethe or the Acheron. Its waters ran dark, almost indistinguishably black, and from its surface rose faint vapors like smoke coiling upward. The air itself seemed to sigh in this place, soft and endless. "This is the Cocytus," Hades said slowly, stepping nearer to its edge. "The river of lamentation. Here, sorrow is not gently set down, as upon Acheron. Here, grief is given its voice. Souls arrive carrying cries held for lifetimes. They let the cries spill, and then they fall silent. As he spoke, your ears caught faint murmurs riding the vapors. They were not sharp screams nor frightening howls, but long-drawn notes like wind across empty mountains. At first they carried sadness, low and heavy. But the more you listened, the more the sounds changed shape, as though dissolving even as they rose. A soul near the edge lifted its pale face toward the vapors and sighed, the sound resonating like a forlorn note that spread upward until it lost form, fading into stillness above. No torment, no shrillness, only sigh after sigh vanishing into air. "It is not weakness to weep," Hades said. His ember gaze remained on the water, though his tone feathered into gentleness, unlike the stern voice mortals often imagined. It is not weakness to cry long after the day has passed. Here, every cry finds its ending, even grief deserves its completion. You stood listening to the endless upward rise of sighs, each dissipating as though carried away by unseen arms. Your own chest softened, released an unlooked-for sympathy. Even unspoken grief within you seemed to sigh, loosening invisibly, dissolving into the quiet of the chamber. As you exhaled fully, you realized your breath itself was joining the Casitas. A soundless offering returned without judgment. Cerberus pressed his paws into the stone floor beside you. 3 heads tipped faintly upward, as if keeping silent watch until every last sigh had reached its rest. Once more, Hades guided you onward. You left the Casitas behind, yet a deep hush followed you, almost like a comfort left pressed upon your shoulders. The sounds of lament had ended, and now silence stretched smoother than before. The path turned sharply, climbing a slope, until a glow brighter than before pulsed across the surface of the walls. The closer you came, the warmer and deeper the glow became, as if fire itself pressed closer from within. The cavern widened, and there before you burst the Phlegethon, the river of fire. But it was not the ravenous blaze mortals feared. Its current surged like molten lava, yet the flames rose not to devour but to dance. Flares of crimson and gold arched gracefully upward, folding back into the current like ribbons in strong wind. Sparks did not burn the air, but drifted across it slowly, like embers that float from hearthwood, glowing as stars in miniature. The entire chamber pulsed with rhythmic waves of radiance. Each flare leapt upward, faded, then leapt again as though sighing huge breaths of fire. Nothing threatened, nothing consumed. It was heat, yes, but cradled heat, all energy, all motion, perpetually folded into itself. This, Hades spoke, and his tone deepened like ground giving way underfoot, is fire freed of rage. It is not flame meant to burn one's hand, not lightning sent to split sky. It is burning as pure motion, the restless force of existence purified. For even fire comes to its rest here, cycling endlessly, carrying souls past their unspent fervor. They drift through it, learn its rhythm, and burn their last frictions away. And indeed, you saw faint silhouettes entering the rippling flames. They passed unharmed, sinking until their vague outlines glowed brightly, small as coals caught beneath the waves. The river glimmered with them, each spark flashing brightly before folding into the current. Each did not vanish, it lingered, became part of the living flame, then softened until its essence no longer struggled. Fiery light turned quiet embers, resting in harmony with the flow. You stood entranced, not afraid, but mesmerized. Fire without pain, fire without destruction. For once in your life, the idea of flame did not warn of loss, it promised release. Hades stepped closer, his robes rippling faintly in the radiance, lighting edges of midnight with red. Mortals fear fire for its hunger. But even fire has no hunger here. Its endless rolling is only one more cycle. Flame completes itself in peace. Even destruction must eventually find stillness. The chamber brightened fully, then dimmed again, waves of glow repeating until your breath found itself rising and falling along with it. You inhaled, your chest rising with the flame's reach. You exhaled, lowering as sparks descended. Over and over, your body fell into synchrony with the fire. Relaxation, not fear, settled more deeply upon you here than in any place before. For now you understood. To burn could also mean to let go of frantic energy well carried, to let it fall, to let it exhale itself at last. Eventually, Hades turned from the flames, walking quietly toward a narrow footbridge of stone spanning the Phlegethon. Cerberus followed, his 3 heads watching the ribbons of glowing fire beneath. You crossed too, your own steps surprisingly light. The heat did not press painfully against your body. It reminded you instead of hearth fire in midwinter, warmth after cold. Crossing through it became less an act of daring and more an act of comfort. On the far edge stood a smaller tributary, one last flowing path lined by black reeds. Their tips gleamed faintly silver in the firelight, like hidden jewels. The water here was still, unmoving, reflecting all above it perfectly torches, reeds, stones, and even your own face gazing downward. This, Hades said softly, is Nemeson, the stream of remembrance. Few come to it. Most souls prefer Lethe, but some rare few ask to drink its waters, and instead of forgetting, they carry memory eternal. They take every story, every lifetime, every learning, untouched by time. Such souls are rare. They become the dreamers reborn, the ones who walk again upon the earth. Most, however, choose sleep. Few choose forever. You stared into the water, its surface calm, and swore you saw faint scenes swim across it, faces unknown, places hidden, fragments of moments that could belong to all mortals who came before, yet they did not clamor or cry to be remembered. They simply drifted across the reflection as if memory itself were a gentle stream, moving endlessly, waiting for a soul to decide whether to scoop from it or let it flow forever. Hades bent slightly at its edge, not touching, only letting its glow cast across his features. His embers dimmed, and he whispered almost to himself, though clearly for you to hear, memory and forgetfulness, two rivers intertwined. To drink deeply of one is to let go. To drink deeply of the other is to carry on. Balance rests in choice. His gaze moved toward you knowingly, as if to remind you that the story itself was a balance too. The listener carried fragments, even as others slipped quietly away into sleep. And isn't that, after all, what you were here for? To sleep by stories, to keep memory where needed, to let go of weight where it burdened. The chamber quieted. Flames dimmed back across the river. The size of Cocytus seemed impossibly far now. The air rested upon you, heavy and calm, yet featherlight in weight. Cerberus yawned again, great heads lowering, and his massive body folded into the stone, as though even he knew it was time to pause. Here, in the chamber of rivers, under their whispers and flames and reflections, you too felt it. Sleep's edge brushing quietly against your shoulders, urging your mind slower, softer, onward into the stillness Hades so carefully kept. Chapter 3 is the Hall of Echoes and the Palace of Stillness. The rivers fell silent behind you. Their sighs, their embers, their reflections faded like softened dreams, succumbed to rest. And in their place rose again the eternal hush of the underworld itself. Hades walked steadily at your side as though the journey had only just begun, though the distance traversed already felt like an entire lifetime of wonder. The torchlight followed once more, hovering gently in air, and Cerberus lifted himself from the stone shore, three heads shaking in unison as he trailed after you with devoted calm. Before you stretched another passageway, curving downward into chambers untouched by mortal folk. The stones grew darker here, their surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it, until it seemed you were walking inside the breath of night itself. You felt no fear. Rather, you felt strangely at ease, as though each further step was drawing you beneath the cover of a weighted blanket deeper into rest. The corridor widened, opened, then widened again, until at last it revealed a hall so vast that words would fail to contain it. Its ceiling stretched upward beyond sight, its walls fading into shadow pierced only by faint threads of crystalline light that gleamed like frozen lightning. Across the polished floor, no ornament lay, no carpets, nor pillars. Only openness, stretching endlessly until the silence within it began to sound louder than speech. This was not emptiness, this was presence. Silence had shape here, and it pressed against you like a soft tide. This, Hades finally said, his voice resonant as a bell struck only once, is the Hall of Echoes. You paused mid-step. The name stirred questions inside you, yet before you could form them, the hall began to answer. From somewhere in its immeasurable span rose voices, not loud, not startling whispers, countless whispers, each gentle, each fleeting. They did not cry or demand. They drifted like the rustling of countless pages of parchment all turning together. Hades lowered his head slightly, listening as one might listen to a song remembered from childhood. Every soul carries a voice beyond the last breath. Here, those voices are kept not as screams, not as laments, but as echoes. Each word ever spoken, each thought ever given, continues, folded softly into these walls. They do not fade. They are sheltered here. The longer you stood, the more you could distinguish them. Words, phrases, almost clear, a mother's lullaby, a poet's unfinished line, a farewell carried on the lips of a traveler. Each was unmoored from time, drifting together, yet never clashing. The hall did not allow dissonance. It pressed each sound into harmony with the next, shaping a chorus of life itself. The effect was dreamlike, a tide of utterances folding like waves. As the echoes washed over you, you felt some familiar, though you could not place them. Perhaps they were not yours, yet their tenderness felt akin to memories that once belonged to you. You exhaled slowly, released into the chorus. Nothing demanded your attention. The voices themselves lulled you deeper, weaving you into their current. Cerberus sat heavily upon the floor, his paws striking faint reverberations into the chamber. Each of his heads tilted differently, one listening intently, another scanning the shadows, the third closing its eyes as though rocking to the rhythm. Hades stood still at the hall's center, as steady as the throne itself had been, and watched you closely. "Do you hear what mortals forget?" he asked quietly. "Each voice, each breath. They are never lost. They remain, not to cling on to the living, not to burden, but to rest here. This hall is their cradle." He did not need to add more, for the echoes told the story themselves. A murmur of love, an oath whispered, a song hummed to an infant, lines from lives now ended, but alive here, still curled into time's embrace. You wandered deeper, feeling the whispers folding softer with each step. They did not frighten, they calmed. You realized they were not reminders to long for what was gone. They were gifts, reassurance that nothing is forgotten, nothing wasted, even when days above slip past unnoticed. All stories found guardianship here. Hades' long robe whispered across the stone, his hand trailing along the faintly gleaming wall. Every motion suggested not possession, but caretaking. His presence here resembled that of a librarian walking the aisles of eternal archives, not a king lording his domain. You realized the truth. The Underworld was not a kingdom to rule. It was a library to protect. At the far end of the hall stood a single doorway, tall yet narrow, hewn into the rock as though cut by time itself. Beyond it, faint light pulled golden compared to the bluish tones you had known thus far. Hades beckoned and you followed, crossing the final hum of whispers until the chamber let them fall back behind you like a fading lullaby. The doorway led not into another cavern, but into a wide chamber lit by torches of amber glow. It carried a different spirit, softer, warmer. Here the stone walls were carved with only one design: circles. Endless circles, some overlapping, some faded, some shining brighter, all feeding into one another without end. This, Hades intoned, is the palace of stillness. Where echoes dwell, stillness follows. Here is where the weight of life lays itself fully down. In the great hall of stillness, souls lay along the stone in countless gentle rows, pale forms without strain. They looked as though they were merely sleeping in places chosen carefully, some beneath the curve of carved circles on the wall, others upon softly polished stone ledges, folded into poses at peace. They did not stir, nor sigh, nor whisper. Their silence was not emptiness but serenity. Hades did not raise his voice. He bent his head instead, gesturing with slight reverence. Here rest those who have gone beyond even remembrance. They linger no more in dreams or gardens, not even rivers. Only stillness keeps them now. They are not gone. They are part of the balance eternal. They are the silence. You looked upon them as one might gaze upon a vast meadow filled with sleeping figures, not funerary, not foreboding. Soothing, as though every stone here were a bed laid with perfect care, and stillness itself the gentle blanket tucked over them. Cerberus lowered onto his side, sighing deeply, three muzzles uniting in a long beat of restful breath. Even here the hound released his endless watch. You sensed it then as well. The pressure of eternity was not here to weigh, but to comfort, as though inviting your own body to mirror the souls resting upon the stone. Hades, too, seemed subdued. His steps slowed. His voice softened to nearly a whisper. When mortals lie with unease at night, they fear sleep, thinking it a cousin of death. But here you see the truth, sleep, and death are one in peace. Each a gift of stillness. To refuse stillness only prolongs weariness. To accept it is to come home. The words filled the chamber like water filling still mists. You breathed them in, deeply, unhesitant. They calmed the racing edges of thought, pressing them at last into quiet. Beyond the rows of resting forms, you noticed one further detail. Light leaking softly from beneath the floor itself, radiance diffused, golden and pale. It was not torches. It was subtler than that. It seemed the earth itself glowed here, a gentle undercurrent revealing that far below, deeper still, light itself had no need to flee. It nourished even stillness, even silence glowed. The chamber seemed endless, and yet it asked nothing further of you. It did not demand you walk farther, nor gaze upon each sleeper. Simply to see, to understand, to breathe in the stillness was enough. You let your eyes fall close for a moment, not in weariness, but in harmony with what surrounded you. And when you opened them again, Hades stood quietly, visible as shadow within light. He lifted his gaze, meeting yours. "It is here," he said slowly, "that you learn the heart of my realm. Not rivers, not cries, not flame. Stillness is the ending of all paths. Stillness is the gift." His words did not settle upon you like doctrine. They fell like feathers upon water, rippling slowly across your heart until you knew their shape to be true. Stillness was no void. It was everything. And there, as the amber glow flickered soft against the carved circles, you too found yourself slowing. The hush within the hall of echoes had soft you. The palace of stillness now held you. The journey was not over, for mysteries yet lay beyond. But in this chamber, surrounded by resting souls upon polished stone, you too felt your thoughts settle, your body surrender, your own heart fall gently into rhythm with the earth itself. The palace of stillness held you for what seemed like hours or moments. It was impossible to tell. Time slipped away in here the same way sound had in the Hall of Echoes. It moved without measure, folding in on itself until awareness became less important than rhythm. Breathing, silence, breathing, silence. Hades stood beside you like a sentinel, though more than that, a companion who had carried you steadily through every chamber of his realm. His ember-bright gaze lingered upon the resting souls stretched across the stone as though he had known each of them, even the ones no memory could recall. He wore his dignity not as a crown, but as weight, carried with the patience of centuries, and yet never harsh. "There are chambers deeper still," he finally murmured, his voice a low swell of sound like a rumble under stone. "Rare is the soul who walks them, rarer still to understand. Yet tonight you walk as not a mortal, but as a dreamer. And dreamers may pass." He gestured, and one of the amber torches detached itself from the wall, floating gently ahead of you both. Beyond the sleepers, farther into shadow, an arched doorway yawned like a mouth between two carved circles of stone. The air near it felt heavier, not with dread, but with expectancy, as though it guarded reverence too great to name. Cerberus rose slowly, each of his three heads giving a patient shake, before padding softly forward. His paws barely tapped against the floor, muffled by silence. You drew closer, the breath in your body falling deeper and slower still, as though the very approach to this doorway steadied you beyond measure. The arch opened into a vast hall, unlike any you had seen before. Where the Hall of Echoes had carried whispers, where the Palace of Stillness had carried silence, this place thrummed. A resonance filled every inch of air, not sound exactly, but vibration. It was as though the very stones pulsed faintly, carrying a heartbeat too immense to belong to any single creature. The walls curved high and round, lined not with circles this time, but with spirals, infinite and overlapping, as if reminding you that all beginnings were also endings, all endings beginnings. "This is the Chamber of Balance," Hedis said, his voice reverberating deeper within this place than anywhere else. It did not sound only in your ears, but resonated in your body, answering the vibrations in the stone. "It is here that all cycles meet. Life and death, memory and forgetting, fire and sorrow. Each is drawn here in the end, and each surrenders into symmetry." The torch paused at the center of the hall and dimmed, not extinguished, but bowing to a glow that radiated upward from the floor itself. At the chamber's core rested a great disk of obsidian, polished so smooth you could see yourself in it even through the dim light. But it was not only your own reflection you saw. The disk seemed to carry thousands. Shapes and faces flickered faintly across its void dark surface souls. Seasons, storms, forests, rivers. It bent all of existence into a circle of eternal return, showing fragmentary glimpses of all things rising and falling, dissolving into one another. Hades walked to the disk's edge, folding his hands lightly behind his back. He did not sit, nor claim, nor press himself upon it. He stood as a guardian, as if watching over well travelers might drink from it their own choosing. "All mortals fear my realm," he said at last, voice steady and patient. "They speak of endings with trembling. Yet this is the truth they do not see. The end is not extinction, it is return. That disk, polished by eternity, holds the reflection of all that was, all that shall be. All things cycle. A leaf falls into soil so a seed may find strength. A soul dissolves into stillness, space may be born for another soul to rise. This is not darkness, it is balance, it is renewal." You gazed into the obsidian circle. Shapes rippled endlessly, a tree sprouting, a wave breaking, a bird's wings lifting before folding again. Each vanished as swiftly as it appeared. And yet you knew some carried memories of your world, though fleeting, all pressed into the same eternal mirror. You heard whispers again, faintly, that these were not echoes of words spoken by mortals. These were whispers of cycles themselves, shaping everything. A hush tide that reminded you of how every season gave way to the next, how every night yielded to morning. Cerberus lay across the floor near the disk, his 3 heads resting in quiet harmony upon his paws. The great hound seemed almost to hum with the same vibration as the stone beneath him, his steady breaths falling into unity with the chamber's endless rhythm. Hades turned to you now. "Do you see why stillness must be guarded? It is not a void meant to devour, nor punishment to terrify. It is the pause that allows renewal. I am called Lord of the Dead by mortals, yes, but I am not keeper of death. I am keeper of its balance. I am guardian against chaos, so that the living may flourish above without being torn apart by endless unraveling." His words fell like steady drops of water into the well of silence, rippling across your heart until the vibrations matched the chamber's hum. For the first time, you felt the fear of endings, the subtle dread that even stories must cease, soften completely within you. There was no dread here. No despair, only continuity. For a long time, you both stood at the disk's edge, watching the reflections roll like tides. The torch hovered silently, enough to keep shadows softened, yet never intruding on the glow below. The air smelled faintly of stone and soil, clean and hushed, a reminder of the earth's earliest days. You are a traveler only in dream, Hades murmured finally, his ember gaze returning to you. Yet dream is truth's softer doorway. When you wake, you may not carry all that you have seen clearly, but a part of it will linger, like the scent of blossoms left in air, like the rhythm of waves that echo long after the sea is gone from your sight. It will help you breathe as the world above rushes loud around you. And when you close your eyes at night, the stillness you tasted here will be waiting. The words wrapped you like a cloak, gently, steadily, with no push, only embrace. Fatigue no longer felt like struggle, but invitation, a hand extended across dark water. You breathed deeply once more, and the air resonated against your chest, as though the chamber itself had sighed with you. You sensed then that the chamber of balance did not ask you to linger endlessly. It offered you a glimpse gently of a gift. The hum beneath your feet grew softer, slower, like someone lullabying you into rest. Cerberus' breath slowed to the deep rhythm of sleep. Even Hades' embers dimmed faintly, as though in this chamber he too could rest for a time. This was your pause. This was your stillness. And with it, you stood calmly on the edge between waking and sleeping, your body relaxing, your thoughts dimming, your soul folded softly into the care of the guardian who kept balance eternal. Chapter 4 is the eternal balance and the gift of rest. The chamber of balance hummed softly behind you as Hades turned, his cloak brushing the stone with the sound of midnight silk. You followed him quietly along a corridor that sloped upward, though no rush of air nor strain of climb accompanied you. Instead, each step felt lighter than the last, as though the weight of the underworld itself had been set aside in those deeper halls. Cerberus padded ahead, his paws steady, tails carried low, 3 heads glancing back every so often with the assurance of a faithful companion. As the passage widened, a faint glow appeared before you. It was not torchlight, nor crystalline gleam, nor the fiery shimmer of the phlegaphone. This light was gentler, almost impossible to see directly. It did not shine, it breathed. The closer you came, the more it seemed to pulse, not as a sun, but as a heart. The corridor opened into a vast cavern, unlike all you had walked before. The walls stretched in a great dome, smooth and seamless, carved not by hand, but by eternity itself. In the center of this space rose no throne, no disk, no river. Instead, there hovered a sphere of pale golden light, large as a mountain, yet weightless, suspended above the ground. It pulsed slowly, expanding and contracting, as though it were the lungs of the realm itself. With every expansion, its glow warmed the cavern. With every contraction, stillness deepened until silence folded over the chamber like velvet. Hades slowed his steps and gestured faintly toward the sphere. His eyes glowed like embers when he spoke. This is the heart of all balance. It does not beat as a living creature beats, yet it carries within it the stillness of all cycles. Every river flows here. Every echo, every sigh, every flame. It is not a god. It is not an object. It is the truth. You stood transfixed, for the light did not dazzle you, nor did it blind. It soothed. Looking at it stilled your racing thoughts, as though all questions found their answers by simply observing. This golden center felt at once impossibly ancient and endlessly new, a presence caught between beginnings and endings. Every breath it gave reminded you of the rise and fall of your own chest, until your breathing matched its slow rhythm perfectly. The air around you thickened not with weight, but with peace. You noticed how even Cerberus, mighty guardian, had laid himself upon the ground, 3 heads resting heavily into paws, eyes drifting closed. His body, so massive and feared on earth, now curled itself like a pup before a fire, surrendered utterly to calm. If even the beast of legend could yield in this place, you too found yourself softening, legs lighter, shoulders loose, eyes damp with calm. Hades stood motionless, watching you, watching the light. The living measure time by suns and moons, he said softly, his words weaving into the low breathing of the sphere. But I measure it here. Each breath of this core is a cycle. A night ended, a morning born, a leaf fallen and a seed stirred. When mortals fear my touch, they do not understand. They fear this pause, this breath, this return. Yet without it their world would crumble. Without stillness, there is no renewal. He raised one hand slowly, fingers pale against the air. As he did, the sphere flared faintly brighter, and within its glow you saw visions rising like gentle waves. A child asleep in its mother's arms. A forest bending beneath the snow, silent, waiting for spring. A shepherd laying down his staff at night, sighing into rest. A bird folding its wings after long flight. These fragments floated into focus, only to sink back into the light again, like bubbles in water. The longer you listened, the more you realized you could hear within the heart a faint drum. Not sharp, not insisting, just a low thumb, dot, dot, thumb, dot, dot. Slower than your pulse, yet steady, resonant, endless. It thrummed not only in your ears, but within your body, smoothing the pace of every muscle, softening the edges of thought. Hades' voice folded into it. This is why I endure my silence, why I accept mortal disdain. I am keeper of balance, not storm, not spectacle. Few seek me willingly, yet none escape me, for I am the pause in between. In your breathing, you know me. In your sleeping, you find me. In your heart's eventual silence, you return to me. Not for punishment, for peace. The golden glow flared once more, wrapping you in warmth softer than any fire. In that moment, you realized that the entire story of the underworld, the gates, the rivers, the palace, the echoes had led here. To this still center. Nothing was truly darker than rest, and nothing more radiant. You closed your eyes briefly, and when you opened them again, the cavern had changed subtly. Not in structure, for the sphere hovered still, but in what it revealed. The walls now shimmered faintly with moving images, like shadows projected from the light itself. They flickered between endless moments, flocks wailing overhead through mortal skies, streams glittering under the warmth of dawn, laughter ringing between houses, dawns breaking after storms. It seemed every life above was mirrored here in silence below, not diminished but woven into the breath of eternity. Mortals do not think of me when they hear laughter, Hades said, eyes fixed upon the glowing visions. They do not think of me when flowers grow, when fields swell with grain. And yet I am here even then. My work is not to shadow those moments, but to guard their end so that others may bloom again. Only a fool would think spring could bloom forever. Without winter, the earth would collapse under its own abundance. Without stillness, even joy sours to exhaustion. His voice was firm, yet no anger touched it. It was not rebuke, but truth spoken without apology. Slowly he lowered his gaze back to you. Do you understand? To know stillness is to know renewal. To resist stillness is to resist joy itself. For joy is only ever possible when it can end, and when rest can begin. His words sank deeply into you. You breathed more easily, your shoulders looser, your eyelids heavier, as though they were clouds growing too heavy to cling to the sky. This was more than story now. It was lullaby incarnate, folding around you within this vast chamber of balance. Cerberus snored faintly nearby, one head's nose twitching as though chasing dream. The sight brought the smallest ghost of warmth to Hades' face, a flicker of something gentler beneath the embers of his eyes. Perhaps, you thought, even the Lord of Silence found his quiet joys within this endless cycle. You realized then that all along, this story was not meant to impress nor terrify, but to rock the mind as gently as the sphere rocked existence itself. The journey had been long, yet what it truly offered was only this, a place of quiet completion, where rest was gift and silence not enemy but friend. And so, as you stood within the living breath of eternity, with Hades watching quietly and the guardian hound surrendered utterly to peace, you felt the heaviness of waking soften away. Your eyes grew heavier. The pulse of your heart matched the rhythm of the sphere. With each exhale, your body released one more thread of the world above. Here was where all voices dissolved. Here was where stillness unfolded its final lullaby. And though the story would yet wander deeper, even this first pause within the heart of eternity promised comfort enough to carry you into the gentlest edge of dream. The golden sphere pulsed on, every breath of its light expanding, contracting, stretching the silence into eternity. You lingered beside it, watching how it never hurried, how it never grew restless, never diminished. Its consistency promised that even if all lights of the world above faded, this one heartbeat would continue in stillness, unbroken, steady. Hades remained beside you, unmoved, the folds of his robe swaying only slightly in the subtle currents of the chamber. The ember glow in his eyes shimmered faintly, as if acknowledging the truth that lay suspended before him. Perhaps even he, guardian though he was, found himself endlessly comforted by the slow breathing of this eternal light. He raised one hand once more, and as his palm tilted toward the sphere, the visions upon its surface shifted. Where before you saw fragments of mortal joys and endings, now you watched entire cycles flowing in perfect order. Spring's blossoms opening boldly, summer's warmth spilling into golden hours, autumn leaves drifting downward in their gentle surrender, winter's hush spreading in silver silence. Around and around they passed, endings folding into beginnings, life spilling into rest. Everything circles, Hades said, his voice slow, deep, like soil speaking to its seeds. The great cycle of mortals is mirrored here. You too are part of it, though walking and breathing above. Your rest at night is one turn, your waking day is another. Even within a single lifetime, you follow the spiral. All that you do is echoed here. And when that lifetime ends, the spiral carries you still onward, weaving into balances unseen. As you gazed, you felt those words rooting inside you. It felt suddenly more natural to let go of worries, to lay burdens down, when you remembered that all you carried was already caught in a circle older than time. You were never truly losing, only returning. Cerberus lay dreaming at the cavern's edge, 3 great heads slumbering, 3 sets of ears twitching faintly. His breaths were long and low, folding into the hum of the sphere's steady rhythm. How strange, you thought, that the feared hound, icon of dread and stories passed from lip to lip above, was here merely another sleeping companion, sighing peacefully beneath his master's calm watch. Hades turned to you and steadied you with his ember-bright gaze. For the first time, it seemed softer. "Tonight, dreamer," he said, "you have walked among my gates, wandered my rivers, touched my palace's silence, stood in my chamber of balance. You have seen what mortals neglect, and you will carry some of it with you, even when your waking mind cannot recall it clearly. Do not shun stillness when it comes to you. Fear it not. Embrace it, for stillness is not an end. It is the gentle doorway into renewal." His words floated over you, settling heavier and slower upon your shoulders than any blanket could. They did not weigh you down, however. They grounded you, anchoring you not only into the cavern, but into yourself. At that moment, the golden glow from the sphere seemed to reach outward. Its breath expanded until it touched you fully, warming your chest, your arms, your entire form. It enfolded you completely so that you could no longer tell where your body ended and the warmth began. The light did not blind. It soothed like the slow closing of eyelids at the end of a weary day. The cavern dulled into blur. The vision softened, disappeared. Even Hades himself seemed now more shadow than form. Yet his voice lingered, low, calm, constant. Above you, the stars move in eternal rhythm. Within you, the breath echoes that rhythm. Each dream links to another. Each soul links to another. Stillness holds them all. You are kept in its care, Emma. You are kept in its care. The sound of your name folded into the chamber like the last ripple upon water, and then hush descended again. A hush that did not feel empty, but protective. You knew then, without doubt, that Hades' guardianship was not one of terror, but of gentleness, of waiting, of tending the balance, ensuring that everything had its time to rest. The cavern grew softer still, its edges blurring like smoke. The sphere pulsed once, twice, drawing slower, quieter, until its breathing felt like your own. You released one final exhale, long and steady, and the world seemed to follow your breath entirely, as though you and the underworld alike had fallen into one single sigh. Darkness wrapped you, velvet and kind. The journey was complete. From the gates of iron, across rivers of sorrow, through gardens of bloom, across fires without pain, into halls of whispers, silence, and balance, you had walked the underworld not as a place of dread, but as a cathedral of eternal rest. And now, Hades, guardian of all stillness, released you to your own. His final words brushed across your fading awareness, softer than shadow, deeper than the pulse of stone. Rest now. You are safe. The cycle keeps you. The silence cradles you. Peace waits within and around you. And with that, his presence dimmed as a guardian fading into mist. The chamber softened. Your thoughts dissolved. And you surrendered at last to the same timeless stillness the whole realm embodied. Good night.